wanted to highlight something that I'm pretty sure most people never thought about, and I'll be honest with you, neither had I, or at least until the patch 2.7 changes came and completely renovated what next hit delay does in this game. And it has nothing to do with my assassin, or me, or your playstyle. It actually has everything to do with Emilio there, my little mercenary. But before we get too deep into it, let me just show you what I'm talking about. All right, let's get him all buffed up. And then let's just get him into the middle of a big old pack of cows, why don't we? Here we go, there's a ton there. Oh, there's 1 proc, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, well, he died. 7 procs really quickly here. Let me go ahead and resurrect him. Here we go. Feed him potions as we go. There we go, he gets hit again, he gets hit again, and he keeps proccing these novas. Now, it's not the point that Emilio's dying. It's those poison novas. And the fact that this entire time, those poison nova procs have been drastically reducing the overall damage output of some of the most powerful builds in the game, and most people never even knew it. So what we're talking about today is the fact that Andariel's Visage, without question, the most used mercenary helmet in the endgame, widely considered to be the best in slot option on your mercenary, not only for its plus skills to increase its might aura for builds that care about that, but the increased attack speed, the life stolen per hit, the massive amount of strength, the ability to socket it to completely offset the fire resistance problem, and the ability to put in a 15 IAS jewel, meant that this helmet allowed your mercenary to reach max attacks frames for the majority of build options that you had for him. And again, if you haven't seen the changes to next hit delay, or if you don't understand next hit delay, first off, I recommend watching the video that I've put up. I'll put a link to it here and in the description. But this Poison Nova proc, this little thing that was turning all those monsters green for all those years, was drastically reducing the potential damage output for a ton of builds this entire time. And luckily, that's not an issue anymore. So a lot of what we've been talking about recently is how many builds can now beat next hit delay and get more damage and all of that. And we've also touched on the fact that a lot of multiplayer gameplay is going to be so much better because people aren't going to be interrupting each other's damage anymore. But none of that is really touched on the fact that this single item right here was responsible for a ton of DPS loss for a lot of powerful skills. Let's go ahead and look at the list of next hit delay skills and get a better grip of what was happening. And while this is now different, and again, I'm talking about before patch 2.7 went live, just to get a better understanding of how many builds are going to become even that much stronger now, we need to understand what Poison Nova and next hit delay have to do with one another. Poison Nova as a skill has a 4-frame next hit delay, and before these changes, what that meant was any other next hit delay skill that tried to apply to a monster in that 4 frames would be completely negated. It's as if the missile didn't even hit them. It goes even further than that. The missile would then fly out and potentially hit monsters outside of that range, which could completely mess up like whether or not you're putting things in next hit recovery, whether or not you were actually safe while you were spamming Nova, and potentially cause some of the deaths that you just went, why were those monsters even able to hit me? It might have been due to Poison Nova. So now let's look at all the skills for the high-end builds where your mercenary proccing this Poison Nova was completely stopping your damage for 4 frames. So that includes multi-shot Amazon. So whenever you're using Andariels with a Pride Mercenary and happen to walk up and get a hit off, every single time that Poison Nova came out, you weren't doing damage with your arrows. The same goes for Strafe, Chain Lightning, Nova, Frost Nova, Fire Traps in with Wake of Fire, the Mosaic Assassin that was already suffering from next hit delay problems before this. That Mercenary getting hit whenever you telestomped onto a pack of monsters was further reducing your damage output. Heck, even on the Barbarian, if your Mercenary is Poison Over proc, you couldn't even apply Battle Cry to that same monster during those 4 frames. Same goes for Fire Druid, which again already had a ton of problems with next hit delay. Whenever your Mercenary was in the middle of a monster pack, getting hit and applying Poison Over, that meant that your Fissure and your Volcano just weren't doing damage. And even more trouble for the Druid comes down to Twister and Tornado. These had massive next hit delay frames, and if the Poison Over went off first and you cast a Tornado, the collision damage just didn't happen, losing you half of your damage per cast until the next hit delay frames for Poison Nova were gone, and then the next Tornado could hit. Even Blade Sentinel, which was already clunky enough with its 1 second next next hit delay and its pathing issues, the off chance that it was coming back in with enough time to be able to hit again and the Poison Nova was actually there and it just passed by doing no damage, and you probably never noticed. Now, just as a quick note, there are certain skills here which the resource is being updated for, but Fist of the Heavens, Dragonflight, and Grimward actually do not have next hit delay, so if you're taking a look at this list of skills, please keep that in mind. And we need to add the Necromancer skill Teeth to this list as one that actually does have next hit delay. And the interesting fact about this is that the worse gear that you had, the lower level that you were, or the less GG your mercenary's gear was, the more of a problem that this was, because the more often your mercenary got hit, the more likely they were to proc the Poison Nova. So if you were still using a treachery armor on your mercenary, which probably wasn't giving you great defense, but at least was getting him that fade proc, his defense total would be super low. And it wouldn't be until you were on endgame fortitude that not only you could put on to an ethereal base, but then would cast the chilling armor proc, further increasing his defense, that you would actually see a drastic reduction in your mercenary's chance to be hit, and such a drastic reduction in the Poison Nova procs. It goes even further to mean that while a base Andariel's helmet was already good enough and just putting on more defense from having an ethereal base was much more like style points, it was actually going even further to drastically reduce the chances that your mercenary would be hit and the Poison Nova interrupting your damage if you had a next hit delay skill on it. So as your character got higher and higher level, the problem became less and less. But in those early days when you were having issues applying damage or survivability, it might not have been your build at all, and it might have just been your mercenary getting smacked a little bit too often because you didn't have ethereal bases to put your rune words and your Andariels in. Now, I don't even have these in ethereal bases because I just wanted to show the difference, but with a basic Archon Plate Fortitude and a basic Andariels Visage, once the chilling armor procced, the mercenary is sitting at around 9,000 or 10,000 defense, which is good enough when he's not running for him to not get hit that often, but he's only level 86 at this point. So most monsters in high level areas or in terror zones are either his level or higher. So they always had a really good chance to hit him regardless of whether or not you had the ethereal base. But if you were to replace these with their ethereal counterparts, that defense number would get pretty high, at least enough to be able to stop basic attacks from monsters who are around his level. While this is no longer a problem in the game, I just found it so interesting that it was secretly an issue this entire time, and I had never seen anyone talk about it. Like, quite literally, no one has ever brought up this facet of the game to me ever before. Like, even on a Poison Nova Necromancer, if you were hitting that monster within the same 4 frames as your mercenary's Poison Nova hit, your Poison Nova just wouldn't apply, probably going further to exacerbate how often poison builds felt like they weren't really doing damage. I just wanted to share this with everybody because it's kind of a cool museum piece at this point, a nice little bit of knowledge that I wish somebody had taught to me early on, and I figured it'd be interesting enough to share with you all. It also goes a long way to highlight just how impactful this patch has been in the overall playstyle and gameplay of Diablo 2, and removing just another roadblock to be able to apply damage for builds, making undergear builds or underpower builds altogether that much more viable because you're not dealing with these weird little procs from gear like this. And at the very least, I hope that you found this as interesting as I did. Let me know down in the comments if you had never heard of this before, if you had never thought about this before, or if you did, how you would change your build in certain circumstances to either not use Andariels or try to mitigate this problem. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it enjoyable, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.